Hello and welcome to another episode of the London Something podcast with myself, DJ Ron. I just wanted to say thank you to all of the subscribers out there and all of the viewers who have been waiting patiently for this new season to begin. Our next guest is the founder of probably the most iconic rave event in the history of jungle. How you doing, Ken?
Okay. We in now, yeah?
We're in, mate.
Oh, okay. Right.
We're in.
Roger that. Yeah.
It's taken some time for us to get back, and thank you for being our first guest. And I
You're
know,
welcome. Thank you for asking me.
yeah, no. It was always going to be on the cards, and as you know, we've been trying to get this together for some time, and we finally got here. And I know you also watch the podcast as well.
Yeah, I watched a couple of podcasts. I
Mm.
watched Shabba,
Mhm,
and I think I watched Phil, Jungle
mhm,
Fever Phil.
mhm, mhm. For
Obviously,
those who
when we
don't know, he means Eastman.
Eastman, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Eastman. I had to familiarise myself with the process before coming along,
Absolutely.
obviously, you know what I mean? But interestingly, um, I found those interviews to be quite informative and really good.
Thank you.
Because you know when you think you know somebody, you don't actually know that person
Mm,
at all.
mm,
More so Shabba than Phil. Phil,
mm,
I know Phil from I was this
mm.
big, but yeah. Sorry, Eastman.
Eastman, yeah, exactly. I mean, that to me is what fascinates me about the podcast as well. Like, these people who I've known for years and years, 30 years. I mean,
Mm,
my son isn't even my son is like 10 years shy of 30. So, and
mm,
I've known these people longer than that. And they sit in a chair, and then I'm like, what? Really?
mm,
That was going on? And this was going on, and that was going on, and it's across everybody as a story. So,
mm.
like, no doubt we're going to get into some of that with you as well.
The thing I found about your podcast, which was unusual, was it wasn't just necessarily about the scene and things within the scene. It actually explored the person, um, certain aspects of which have absolutely nothing to do with the scene. And it's like, personal aspects of their life and what what shaped them, what put them on the road that they're on to become the people that they are. I find all of that interesting, rather than just talking about the scene all the time.
Yeah,
Although obviously we will discuss the scene.
yeah.
I mean,
I mean, not to get into it too much because we're going to get into your story, but it's what I think I find the most interesting because anybody who was going to interview you, and when you leave here, they're going to speak about telepathy, which I mean, that's where that's what you're known for mostly, certainly in the jungle scene. Um, they'll speak about telepathy. They'll speak about jungle raves. You'll speak about that, but they won't speak
yeah.
about your life. We're going to try and cover that in the next couple of hours. So, Sting, if you've watched the podcast, you'll know that where we like to start is from your earliest sort of memories as a child,
Mm.
growing up, and we speak mostly about family and again, really your earliest memories and how you came about.
Yeah.
So take me back.
So my story is very complicated, and it's not a particularly happy one. Yeah. Um, my parents came over here from the is part of the Windrush generation, uh, one of the first generations of black folks coming from the Caribbean. Um, so my mum had, what did she had? She had four kids before me. I was born in 1965 in Hackney, but I think I might have mentioned this to you before. Um, when I was born, um, my mum found herself in an altercation with a woman that lived upstairs. And that altercation escalated to the point where um, that woman attempted to stab my mum, yeah,
Shocking.
who at the time was pregnant with me. But unfortunately, my dad got in the way and he died as a consequence of being stabbed by that woman.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I only bring that up because I think it's very relevant to me in so much as it took me a long time to understand my state of mind, my process, the way I process things, what takes me from 0 to 100. You understand what I'm saying? Why I can be so emotional about certain things, and just my whole perspective on life, really. And it took me a while to figure it out, and then I realised that it's a direct consequence of being in my mum's womb, in her stomach, at a time when she was experiencing so much trauma in her life.
Just felt I could. I mean, when you tell me that story, I think about your mum and what she imagine. I mean, it's impossible to imagine what she would have been going through, being pregnant with 3 or 4 other children, and her husband. They've only just landed in this country. Welcome to England. Is I mean, it's like what? It's like shocking, man. I'm so sorry to hear that, bro. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it was a long time ago, Ron, you know what I mean? But the only reason I bring it up is because it's relevant in so much as I feel like that was a determining factor with regards to who I am today. You know, people don't realize, all of the testosterone, all of the endorphins, all the dopamine, all of the mad chemicals that my mum are releasing, which are in turn being released into me. You know, because I only bring it up and I'm only sort of really focused on it because it took me a long time to figure out myself. You understand? You know, that I can appropriate that specific situation to so many things that have been prevalent and occurrent in my life over a period of time that it didn't click. You understand what I'm saying?
Of course, yeah.
And it was only sort of in the last, I don't know, 5, 7 years.
Really? Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it was only in the last 5, 7 years I kind of sat down and I thought about it and it all kind of made sense to me. But anyway, that's how I came into the world. So anybody that knows me that says, that dude, leave him alone, because he ain't right.
I mean, the knowledge of, let me word this right, the data on traumatic pregnancies affecting children, to me, it seems quite recent anyway. I mean, there's a study going around in America at the moment that's saying, like, how comes, they should do one here, how comes so many children are being born with ADHD and some sort of neurodivergent,
Mental disease.
yeah, or,
Mental,
like mental afflicted,
yeah.
and mental affliction.
Mm.
And again, we can look back and say, well, what's happening to the mothers during those years, those formative years of birth? Then, but yeah. Again, so I mean, it's some time ago, and I know you've kind of measured your own way of dealing with it, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that I'm sorry to hear it. You know what I mean? That it's happened. So.
Well, God rest my mum's soul in peace. She passed 3 years ago, January, gone. Feels like just yesterday. But she was a strong woman. And in spite of everything, still managed to keep me here. Do you know what I mean? Because I could honestly say if it wasn't for my mum, there's a strong probability I would not be here. You know, things that I've done in life things that, you know what I mean, could have had a real detrimental effect on me. I didn't do because of my mum.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say you was a mummy's boy?
Very much so.
Okay.
A lot of people don't want to hold their hands and plead guilty to that. You know what I mean?
I'm a full-on mummy's boy without any shadow of a doubt.
Well, I'm the last one.
Yeah. I'm the middle one, but I'm a full-on mummy's boy all day long, right to this moment right now.
I'm the last one, and I think more especially as the circumstances I just described to you, coming into the world in that way, I think my mum just gave me special attention. Do you know what I mean? But there's nothing wrong with being a mummy's boy.
No, of course not.
Do you know
I
what
love
I mean?
it.
It just means that you can probably be a little bit over emotional at times because you've got that female influence constantly in your life. You know, females can be emotional, right?
Born into this world under those tragic circumstances.
In Hackney.
A very different time to now, obviously. And then obviously you growing up as a young boy. Where did you live at that time? What was your sort of like housing? Where, you know, we're trying to get into an idea about where you were as a child in your head.
But I grew up in Hackney. I went to Berger Road School. And then in later years, I went to Upton House, which is now known as, it's one of them academies.
Yeah, academies.
Anyway. But growing up in Hackney is an education in itself, as I'm sure, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You must know, right? More especially then, more so than now. Honestly, I think if I had to grow up today, in today's generation, I doubt very much that would end well for me. Yeah. Because as bad as it was growing up in Hackney then, it's not nearly as bad as what this generation are dealing with now.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that.
You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, we had things and that going on, do you know what I mean? We all had our social challenges and, you know, things to overcome. But I just feel like this generation here is next level.
Yeah.
Is complete next level.
I mean, we could do an entire podcast series on that.
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. But yeah, I mean, my journey through Hackney was a real education, really, growing up. You know, I grew up on an estate. I initially grew up, my first memory actually was Nisbet House, just off of Homerton High Road. And Nisbet House was very, what's the common term to use, urban, right? In so much as every house had a family. Do you know what I mean? Every family had young kids. So the estate was, it was very much a socially interactive place as a child growing up, even at that age. Although saying that, I can distinctly remember growing up or coming from the circumstances that I'd come from. My mum was always a little bit overprotective of me. And my brothers, although I had brothers, were slightly older than me. I mean, sort of, it was almost like they were generationally older than me, even though they weren't. Their whole movement was completely different to mine. So much so that my older brother, Pete, who's also passed away, is 10 years November just gone. He effectively was like a father figure to me, as well as my brother. Do you know what I mean? So they was moving in a whole different generation. Although we were the same generation, my mum was overprotective. So although grew up in a very interactive social space, Nisbet House, I was in it, but I weren't really in it, if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah, it was a little bit sheltered.
Do you mean by your mum saying you're allowed to play out or not?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Okay.
type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, I had cousins. Well, she says they were cousins, but you know what it's like.
They might just been her friends and they're the same age and whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's your auntie. She's not your auntie.
Yeah.
She's just someone that come from
Yeah, that's right.
the island,
Yeah,
the same island as your mum.
Yeah.
You
Of
understand what I'm
course.
saying? But they got kids
It
downstairs.
took years to work that out. What auntie actually meant for me. Yeah. Sure,
So, so yeah, I mean that. I only bring that up because that was a really interesting time for me growing up. That taught me a lot. And we left there, Nisbet House, and went to Stelman Close, which is a little estate just off of Nightingale.
That's where I kind of like first got introduced to the Kings.
Is it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay.
Through your nephew, Terry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
T. Dodger, I can't.
Yeah, Terry. Yeah, but carry on, sorry.
Yeah, so I think I must have got there about 11 to Stelman Close.
Okay.
And all the things that I just said to you about Nisbet House was Stelman Close multiplied by 10 on steroids.
So Stelman Close was more than Nisbet House?
More than Nisbet House. But yeah.
Really?
I mean, literally.
It's smaller though.
Every single house, Ron, had a young family that had kids that you would interact with on a day-to-day basis. But bear in mind, Stelman Close is literally off of the back of Nightingale.
Of course, yeah.
Right? So it's almost like a part of Nightingale, just
But
called
to the
something
side.
different.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But, and plus I'm a little bit older now. I'm 11 now. You know, so I'm a little bit more out there. But to give you some idea, I was selling weed when I was 13. I'd gone the wrong way by the time I was 12.
What does the wrong way look like?
The wrong way looks like, right, I'm going to tell you this story, right? This is relevant to who I am today, because had that have not happened, I could have gone a completely different way. I'm on the estate, Stelman Close, 11 years old. Definitely weren't born with a silver spoon in my mouth.
Yeah.
All right?
Really?
What I mean is, I emphasize that point because what I mean is, I was so far the other way, right? So you can imagine, all the other kids in Stelman Close have got bikes, right? Pretty much all the other kids in Stelman Close have got bikes. Well, I think it was probably my 12th birthday or something like that. Yeah. I've been on the estate a year now, watching these kids on their bikes and they're all out and they're having fun and they're doing their thing. I ain't got a bike, right? But I remember it like it was yesterday. Yeah. Oh, I said, right, we're going to get you a bike, and we went to Brick Lane, just there in Shoreditch. And she bought me a chopper. I don't know if you remember the chopper.
Everyone remembers a chopper. Everybody our age remembers a chopper anyway. You thought you were the man now.
I'd waited so long for this bike. And now I got the chopper.
Yeah, you got
the bike.
Yeah.
And I am happy.
Premier bike.
I am next level happy now. Yeah, because now I can interact. Now I can go out with the boys on the bikes and you know what I mean? Get involved. Anyway, the first night I had the bike, yeah, I left the bike in the back garden. The first night, yeah, and they nicked the bike.
No, Kenny.
They nicked the bike.
No, Kenny.
They stole the bike. Yeah?
That's
And I can
heartbreaking.
remember coming downstairs and my bike was gone, blood.
Nah, man.
Yeah?
That's heartbreaking.
And I can distinctly remember my brothers saying to me, boy, can't believe that's happened. Because the thing is, everybody knew everybody
Mm.
on the estate. You understand what I'm saying? And it was almost like, who would do that?
Mm.
Forget the bike. It's just the emotional trauma that it's going to cause you. Losing your bike. Like, not that other kids would give a shit about that. But anyway, the next day, I ain't going to lie, I went out and I stole a bike.
Mm.
Right?
But how?
I just went out with my mates. I said, nah, fuck this. I've got to have a bike.
Mm.
And I went out and stole a bike. And you know, had that have not happened to me, right, I could have been a totally, completely different person.
Wow.
Yeah? Because you know how it goes. You steal a bike, you steal another one. You steal another one, you steal another one. And then before you know what's going on, you're stealing motorbikes.
Mm.
And then 2 minutes later, you're stealing cars.
Mm.
And before you know what's going on, your trajectory, your life has just gone in that direction. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So that was a very significant incident for me in life, because I believe had my bike not been stolen, I could have taken a totally different path. Everything happens for a reason, is what they say.
Yeah, yeah.
But
It's tricky to try and quantify that, because I think that estates have a very good reputation for steering people the wrong way by following their friends.
right, I think the difference with me though is that particular set of friends. I don't know if we would have been acquainted or as close, as tight as we were had it not been for that incident.
Right. It's like they
And
backed you.
you understand?
Yeah, yeah. It's like they backed you. They were
Yeah.
like, "No, I'm not having that.
You
Come on, we're gonna
understand?
go and sort this out." And you were like, "Yeah, I'm with it." And yes, you formed that friendship.
Yeah, and the point I'm making is that may not necessarily have happened had that bike not been stolen. It sticks in my mind, that bike.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah?
mental. Yeah, yeah.
Stays in my mind. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. As I said, everything happens for a reason. I took that path. Um,
Well, look, you're 11 years old at that time. Yeah.
I'm a
So
little bit older than that now.
okay.
I'm
So
12 going on 13. The only reason I can remember that is because I can remember when I was 13, I got my first car.
right.
I
Well, let's
made a...
go back a little bit. Let's
Yeah.
just go back a little bit, because you speak about moving to Stelman Close when you were 11. Speak about your older brothers and whatever, and you know, whatever the life was at Nisbet House. But clearly there were like, you know, like 11 years before you got to Stelman Close. So what were you like? I generally try to find out, what were you like as a child, like school-wise? You know, like what school did you go to when you were younger? Like your very, very formative years. How did that sort of play out?
I went to Berger Road Nursery and Berger Road School, which was literally a stone's throw away from Nisbet House. There was a lot of personalities even back then, like as a young baby, like almost growing up. Um, I was actually quite good at school, believe it or not, or that early part of school. I was really, I was on it. I had a lot of time for school,
Okay.
yeah, where other kids might be out running around, you know what I mean, doing this, that, and the other. As I said, I spent a lot of time with my mum, which meant I had a lot of time for books, I had a lot of time for reading, I had a lot of time for generally being at school. So I was pretty good in those early sort of formative years growing up. It was only when I got to secondary school, which was Upton House School. It was what it was known at the time. It's now an academy. I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
But it was only when I got to secondary school, I was like, I was moving in the wrong circle. As I said to you before, bike had been stolen. So my peer group were not really about school.
But I don't know. I don't know. I always kind of like had this kind of this idea that being at a boys' school in the hood, it was going to be challenging for you to come out of that in a you know what I mean, a good light, unless your parents were like really had the reins on you, because everybody's trying to outdo each other. I mean, like, is it that much different in a mixed school? I'm not sure, but that's why I asked you the question. Do you think that?
I think it probably is. I think it probably is, because obviously in a male environment, where there are no female hormones, it's just pure testosterone.
There's one after
all
the other
day, every
day.
It must impact, your mentality and how you approach things. Although saying that, I can remember when I was at school, we used to go to the girls' school and stand outside there every lunchtime. Skinners. And was it Dalston Mount?
Yeah.
Every day we used to go there and stand up outside the girls' school. But I think it probably does. It does impact you as a young person, being around guys, men, male testosterone all day, every day. I'm pretty sure it must do. I genuinely don't think it could have gone any other way for me, to be honest with you. Yeah, I don't think I was ever meant to be in an office or in an administrative environment or anything of that nature. I've always been kind of out and about on the road, about the street, about interacting with people on a certain level. Do you know what I mean? So
you're on Stillman Close. You're like, your bike's got nicked. You're now moving in a crowd that is steering you down the road of, we'll just call it what it is. You know what I mean? Crime. Yeah. And you're in Upton House, and you're now 13, and you steal your first car. Right?
Well, I had my first car.
Oh, you had 13. It, not stole it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had your first car.
No, hold on, a lie. 16. Yeah, it was probably around 15. Let's not say 13. That might be a bit too soon. I was still kind of in the motorbikey kind of phase at that time. But my estate was crazy.
Do you know what I just remembered? Didn't Eastman live on that estate?
So I'm going to come to that.
Right, yeah, I just remembered that. But I didn't know Eastman. Who did I know?
No, I'm going to come to that, because I must have been coming up 16. Eastman's dad, Billy, God rest his soul in peace.
Yeah.
Billy was like my mentor growing up on the estate. I knew Phil. I knew Phil's brother was Billy. I knew his sister, Melissa. I knew his mum, Margaret.
Yeah.
Me and Phil's old man were like this. Because I was taking a certain trajectory. Phil's old man was notorious, shall we say.
Yeah, he was well known. He was useful, handy, as they say.
Billy was typically East End, my word and my balls. Do you understand what I'm saying? Nice enough guy, so long as you didn't upset him. You understand? If you upset him, then you're definitely going to have a problem. You know what I mean? But I'm sure Phil won't mind me saying his dad was, to a degree, everything I aspired to become at that age.
And what age was this again now?
About 15, 16, around that sort of age. But me and Billy, we were very, very close. Very close. But everything I used to do, if I used to go out and acquire stuff, shall we say, Billy would, you know what I mean? And then sort us out, you know what I mean?
It's like classic Oliver Twist almost. Yeah.
Oliver Twist is a good
Yeah.
analogy, actually. At this time, I've kind of moved on from the estate crowd and the people on the estate, and I'm now starting to mix and associate with friends from school. That was actually the time that I first got acquainted or involved in music. I'm sure they won't mind me mentioning their names: Harold Morris, Mark Winter, Dirty Den. We all started a sound system at school called Sabrina
I remember
back in the day.
Sabrina well. Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
it very well.
So you got the sound running in the background. You know, it's kind of weird because I talk about this stuff now and I reflect on it. And I mean, that shit is real for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I talk about it. But for any young people listening to this podcast, I really do want to emphasize the fact that I don't glorify it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? If I had to do it all again, knowing what I know now, I would absolutely do it completely differently. Do you know what I mean? Because there's too many ways to achieve here right now than to have to put your liberty effectively on offer, and sometimes even your life. Do you know what I mean? So although I talk about it, I don't want to glorify it or make it seem like it's some really cool, exciting, sensible way to live. It's not. It's dumb.
Yeah.
The point I was making is I was quite young when I went to prison. I got 5 years. I got 5 years for armed robbery when I was 16.
Wow.
Mhm. Um,
Tell me a bit about that.
I went through a period of time of doing a whole load of madness. Yeah. Um, you talk about on the road. Um, I was that guy. That that was the guy that I was, without any confusion, right? But the fucked up thing about it is, I was actually quite successful with it. Do you know what I mean? It was only when I got nicked and went to jail, yeah, that I kind of opened my eyes. Because you got to remember, prior to that, my life was wake up with a spliff in your hand, yeah, go to bed with a spliff in your hand, yeah, and my whole psychology, my whole mental state of mind is fucked anyway. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm so far away from who I really am.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying? I can't see the wood through the trees. This went on with me for years.
Mm-hmm.
For years. But then when I went to jail, yeah, that was the one time in my life, as I sit here talking to you now, I can reflect on and say, right, I was actually not doing any drugs, yeah, up at a certain time of day, utilizing my mind in a positive, progressive way, because I did a lot of courses and stuff when I was in there, and reminded myself that, oh yeah, when you was at primary school, you was actually quite intelligent. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And really, what it did for me was it changed me as a person, because additionally, when I was in jail, my first son, my firstborn, was born when I was in jail. So that gave me the added pressure of responsibility when you come out of jail. Do you understand what I'm saying? So all the time, I'm there, I'm catching myself, I'm catching myself, I'm catching myself.
And what when you say catching yourself, what's happening while you're catching yourself? What are you doing and what are you telling yourself?
Well, the thing is, when you're just out living that party life, or when you're just out smoking all day, doing stupid shit all day, every day, right? You never really get a chance to stop, sit down, and reflect and analyze and try to stabilize, balance your mind, center your thoughts, really think about life. You know what I mean? Especially at that age. Yeah. So sitting down in a cell, you've got to remember, I'm in there for armed robbery. So the initial part of my sentence was bang up 23 hours a day, out for an hour. I think it might have even been 23 and a half hours a day. You know, you've got 23 and a half hours a day to sit down and think about life. Do you know what I mean? Because now you're stone cold sober.
Yeah.
You know, and to a degree, you're repairing your mind. That's what you're doing. Yeah. So prison actually was a positive thing for me. If I'm really, really honest with myself, maybe didn't need so long.
Yeah.
But it was actually an opportunity for me to repair my mind, which I did. And you get to a point when you're sitting down in jail, when you really have sort of caught yourself, and now you're sitting there and you're examining your surroundings. You understand what I'm saying? And you're looking at the people that you're having to interact with,
yeah.
and you're going, hold on a minute, how the fuck did I get here? How did this happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, I went through that process of self-examination, shall we say. And really, it woke me up. It changed me as a person. As I said, I'd had my little boy, Jamie, came out with responsibility and said, you know what? I need to do something constructive. And I went and got a job with BT. I'd just come out of jail, got this qualification. Microelectronics, I think, is what the name of the course was. And funnily enough, it was all the things that I'd just studied and done, so it was fresh in my mind. Anyway, did the test, got the job.
Excuse my ignorance, but do they still do that in prisons where they say they can teach you a vocation that you could come out with and then get into, or is that something of the past?
Honestly, Ron, I
You have
have
not.
no idea.
Right. Okay.
Thankfully, right?
Yeah.
I have
Okay.
no clue what they're doing in
Okay.
prisons now.
Yeah. And another question: you said that your brother encouraged you to do the job, but did he encourage you while you was in prison to take the course?
No,
That was your own choice.
that was my own choice.
Right. Okay.
That was my own choice because, you know, when you're sitting down in jail, you've had an opportunity now to clear your mind. Yeah. I can say honestly, prior to that point, my life had just been like a circus. Do you know what I mean? I'd not had an opportunity to stop and really think, or you know, take a mature outlook on life, a career path. You know, none of that was relevant to me. I was just out there wild. You know what I mean? So you go to jail, you sit down for a minute, you clear your head, you've got an opportunity to sit down and think. You've got all these hours, all these days, weeks, months, years to kill. You can either do one of two things, isn't it? You can either try and spend your time productively doing something, you know, stimulate the mind in the process and make life easier for yourself, or do nothing and fuck around and ultimately come back in exactly the same circumstances or situation that you went in. So for me, that was a no-brainer. You know what I mean? I'd always kind of been interested in electronics, so technical stuff anyway. So I was all about that. But no, I didn't have any encouragement. I didn't need any. Strangely, when I came out, I don't know what it was or why it was, But the management at BT, they actually took a liking to me. I don't know if that was because I was the token black guy, but somebody saw something
In
in
you.
me.
Yeah, that's good.
And what that led to was I was given a lot of courses. You know, BT run a lot of their own in-house courses for a lot of their equipment and the technical side of what they do, you know. So it added to what I knew already. Do you know what I mean? And then you had this transition, as I say, from analog to digital, which in itself, the time constraint to do that, I don't know why the time constraint was so small, but they just had to get it done in no time. Do you know what I mean? So there was loads of overtime. You got to remember back then, BT, if you worked evening, I think it was time and a half. If you worked Saturday, it was time and a half. If you worked Sunday, it was double time. You know what I mean? And then additional to that, in the process of doing all of this work, I was promoted very quickly, very, very quickly from a BT standpoint, because there's guys that have been with BT for 1,000 years. They're like dinosaurs and still T2A or T2 whatever.
Yeah.
Do you know
Which
what I
is
mean?
a standard, I suppose, that stands for a particular lower or mid-level.
And I made the transition from that to, I think it was T1. T1? T1, which was almost like management. Bear in mind, I'm 25.
Right, okay.
Yeah? So the advancement in grade directly relates to your salary as well. That changed my trajectory. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because a lot of people come out of jail with good intentions, but they don't get the break or they don't get the bring in. You understand what I'm saying? Luckily, I got that step on the ladder, you know, and for me, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, but it wasn't just a step on the ladder. It was the step on the ladder, but plus the aptitude to say, I'm gonna press on with this. This is why I said earlier, you must have enjoyed it. You hadn't reached the money yet. It was just right, yeah, joining the dots of like analog to digital. This is fun. You must have liked it in some way or another enough to have pursued it in such a way that then somebody else has seen you and said this, and then the money came, and then you're like, yo, this is actually working
This
out in my
makes
favour.
sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It was a combination of things,
Yeah, sounds
right?
like
Because
it.
it's
Yeah.
funny how life can take you in a direction, yeah? But for me, it was a combination of, I'd had my son when I was in jail, yeah? Um, I'd had an opportunity to stop and sit down and assess myself. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it was a no-brainer. No-brainer.
Okay. So you at BT, you're doing really well. You're enjoying what you're doing. You're making money. You're still a very young man, not even 30 yet, right? What? How does that change into, and does that steer you into, or if it steers you in, is that the vehicle that starts to steer you in, to the Sting that we know nowadays? How did that all come about? What was happening around that time in your life as well?
Yeah, so around that time, I mean, I was working for BT. Brett, my partner in Telepathy,
Yeah,
was
yeah. Big
also
up
working
Brett.
for
Yeah,
BT.
yeah. Long time I
Yeah,
haven't seen Brett, man. How is he?
he's all right.
He's good. Give
He's
him my
still
regards.
about.
Well,
Yeah,
he'll see this, won't he? So big
yeah,
up
yeah,
Brett.
yeah. He's all right. He's
Uh,
all right. We were both working for BT.
mm,
He was already into rave. He had an event called Freedom. I don't know if you remember
yeah, I do
Freedom.
remember it. Yeah.
They'd done a couple of Freedom events, so they were familiar with rave. We get talking, he says to me, yeah, let's do an event. I'm coming from rare groove, street sounds, and I'm hearing about this rave, acid house parties, and I'm thinking, brother, from what I've heard, that just sounds like a shit ton of noise to me. You understand what I'm saying? It's so far removed from what I'm used to, or my perception of going out. Do you know what I mean? What is this? You know what I mean? Anyway, I can remember it like it was yesterday. My mate Tony Sprott, he said to me, Sting, come on, let's go to this rave. Funnily enough, it was Paul Ibiza's event in King's Cross, Ibiza. I said, yeah, fuck it, why not? Let's go. Let's see what's going on. Check it out. I'd heard about it. I want to go and see it for myself and see what's happening, you know what I mean? So we go down there. We get there. I think we had to climb over a fence to get in. The event was jam. It was ram. We had to climb over a fence to get in. And I get into this place. And Ron, it was like being born again. Yeah? It was like being born again. Right? Yeah. You got to remember, like, this is, what is this? This is 89. It's still very raw. Get into this warehouse. Production was very sparse back then. A couple of lasers and some strobes, right? And some backdrops, yeah? But the energy was just different. It was so liberating. It was just like, wow, this shit is going on. I gotta be part of this. Do you know what I mean? And for me, that was like, it's like a calling. Do you know what I mean? It really, really opened my eyes and just changed my whole understanding of what it meant to go out and enjoy yourself and have a good time. Because prior to that, going out was very much it was almost like a stush affair. Do you know what I mean? It was almost like carpet, mirrors, chrome. It was more about like appearance and ego and your own sort of self-esteem and how you profile and how you're perceived. And do you understand what I'm saying? And then at some point it might be about the music. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, and it was just so, I say it like that, it sounds bad. I mean, everybody's different, isn't it? Everybody gets different things out of different situations and circumstances, but that's how it felt to me. It was almost like, you know, the music came last and everything else was a priority. Whereas when you went to an event, the music came first. It was about the music. It was about expression. It was about being able to not be overly concerned about what you look like. Do you understand what I'm saying? It was about just freeing up your spirit and just really having a good time in whatever capacity or in whatever context or whatever that looked like. That added to the social interaction of being in that space, such a diverse space with a whole different social mix-up of people. Do you know what I mean? Just all having a good time. It was liberating, Ron. Honestly, it was life-changing for me, that first event. It really was.
Yeah, I mean, listening to you makes me wonder. Yeah, and you said it so beautifully as well, you know, and so kind of like fond memories, you know. Makes me think of how many other people went through that same process that you went through.
I was hooked. Like, I'm in. Yeah, no confusion. I got Brett saying to me, let's do an event. I've actually got enough money in my pocket to do an event. I'd done a lot of business with Phil's dad, Billy over the years. For those that don't know, that's Phil, Jungle Fever Phil, Cool FM Phil. That's his dad,
Eastman.
Eastman's
Yeah,
dad.
yeah.
This is going back to before I went to jail, right?
Let's talk a bit about that. Before we get into the rave, let's talk a little bit, let's expand a little bit more on Billy and your relationship with him and him essentially becoming what one might, or what in your own words is as a mentor.
Billy was very much my mentor because I'd done a lot of business with Billy over the years, right? So for those that don't know, I know Phil did a podcast here with you, and I know he spoke about his dad.
He did, yes.
But I'm going to speak about him as well in the context of how I know him, right? Billy was very much East End, yeah? My word and my balls, right? If you had an arrangement with Bill and you shook his hand, that was done. That was better than any contract that any solicitor could draw up, right? Because he literally was my word and my balls, yeah? And the wonderful thing about Billy is if he liked you, yeah, there's nothing he would not do for you. Nothing he wouldn't do for you, right? He was that type of character. So I'd done a lot of business with Bill prior, and I don't know, one day we was talking and I said to him, yeah, I want to do an event, need a warehouse. And then the next thing I knew, we had a warehouse. Tara's nightclub, Marshgate Lane, behind what used to be the Porsche dealers. Literally like right behind it. So anyway, between him, myself and Brett, we got this telepathy thing up and running. I can
Who
remember.
came up with the name?
I came up with the name.
Right,
I came
okay.
up with the name.
Yeah.
I came up with the name. And it's funny because the name, I relate back to that first event that I went to, Paul Ibiza's event. Yeah. You know, when we talk about like-minded people, yeah, I think that was also what really opened my eyes, the revelation that there were like-minded people in and amongst us in society, yeah, that I wasn't aware of before because of the circle and the genre that I was in. And it was only when I got into that playing field that I realized, oh, there are like-minded people, like, do you know what I mean? That really are not watching colour and are not watching social class and are not watching anything other than just watching the music. Do you understand what I'm saying? So
Very true.
that telepathy thing was like, yeah, we're all on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're all, and that's really how I come up with the name. And I can remember the first night we put an event on. I really didn't think the event was going to happen. Yeah, because when we got Tara's Marshgate Lane, it was actually a private members club. It didn't have back then. It was an entertainment's license. It just had a private members club license, and I wasn't sure that it was going to happen. But and even if it did, I wasn't really sure like what the outcome was going to be because it was our first event. But pleased to say, that first night was mad. It was mental. It was everything I thought it would be, ideally, and more. I have to thank Brett for really introducing me to rave at that level. Because a lot of people coming into the game, they don't really come in at that level. They come in much lower and have to gradually work their way up. But because he'd done a couple of events before, and had established working relationships and links with people, that event was really, really successful. And that was really the beginning, the start of Telepathy. It would have never happened without Bill. And it probably would have never happened without Brett. Yeah.
I recall a story. I don't know whether it's folklore or whatever, but there's a story that the rave was on, and while the rave was on, there was too many people. And so what they did, they knocked down a wall and it opened up into another warehouse, right? And then they just fitted more people in.
So we've got telepathy running week in, week out, right? You got to remember the capacity over there, I think must have been about 1,200, 1,500. Every week we were turning people away, couldn't get in. And I can remember saying to Bill, I said, Bill, mate, we're struggling here, man, because, like, you know, we're turning people away. Billy being Billy, right? Billy was just like, okay. I went there one week and there was a hole in the wall. It was just like a hole in the wall. And the size of telepathy, again, the other side
Right, of the
of the
So
wall.
that's how the story
Do you know
went.
what I mean?
Right, okay.
Yeah. But what he did, he put a curtain up. Right? We put a curtain up. And I can remember we opened that very same week. And when the place got totally jammed, we literally just pulled the curtain down and opened the whole other side of the venue that had sound and production and everything was in
Ready,
there.
set up.
You know what I
right,
mean?
Yeah.
That's really how telepathy came to be back in 1990.
1990. Let's say this was a coup that was going on in your life while you were working at BT, right? And then you're like, right, you know what? I'm having it off here. You know, I'm having it off here. I mean, listen, you know, we spoke earlier about egos and stuff like that. 25-year-old kid making money he can't count with a minder or business partner that nobody can touch. You're invincible. You know, how is that starting to affect your personal life and Kenny King, not Sting? You have a young son.
Sadly.
You have a young son, you know, like, you know, you I don't know whether at this time you're still on Stillman Close, but what was happening in your personal life at that time?
Right. So BT was an early start. BT was 8 a.m. Right? And you got to remember, I'm like clubbing, running my business on a weekend until fucking stupid o'clock in the morning, right? And then having to go to work on a Monday morning to make a fraction of the money that I'm making.
Albeit it was good money, but now in
Now it's,
comparison, in comparison to this new money, now it's a fraction.
I remember going in one day and one of the managers said something to me. And I was just like, do you know what? See you later. Picks my coat up off the back of the chair and was out the door. Yeah. And I think that was a turning point for me because there was a mental shift that went on in my head. Obviously, being in the industry and all the things associated to the industry, yeah, it's hard to totally detach yourself from that. It's almost impossible.
Sorry, detach yourself from.
Without getting into specifics, just any and everything that goes on within the industry.
Oh, right, I'm with you. Sorry, yeah, I thought you were
Yeah.
talking about the BT industry. You're talking about the industry you're now in.
Yeah.
Right, so you're in the industry, and this is why I asked the question, actually, what's happening in your personal life? Because you are now involved in the game where money and respect and all of the attributes that come with living in the inverted commas hood as a big player are being adorned on you. But how is that affecting you?
There are things that come with that industry that you just can't detach yourself from. Do you understand what I'm saying? So
Give me an example give me an example. Because you say you can't detach yourself from. I don't think that's true in anything you do. I think that you can detach yourself, but maybe you didn't have the tools at that time to detach yourself from. But give me an example of something you couldn't detach yourself from.
What I can tell you is I got caught up, yeah? Which is a million miles away from where I wanted to be when I first initially come out of jail, yeah? Did it change me or my personal circumstances? No, not really. But did it change my route to achieving my objectives? Yes,
Well, walk me
very
through
much
that
so.
because I'm curious as to what happens next. Like what happens next in your life, because not long after that I knew you very well, and that's the
Do you
version that I knew.
remember how we met?
No, I don't.
All right, so
Yeah.
I'm going to remind you because I remember it like it was yesterday. Telepathy Marshgate Lane was running, and I remember meeting you at Global Village, Heaven, Rage, on a
Rage.
Thursday night.
I'm waiting to hear the story now. I do not remember it at all. Go on.
I was outside Rage.
Yeah.
Run. Mate, I don't know how you found out I was the promoter of Telepathy,
Yeah.
right? But you got me, you cornered me. You cornered me and you told me how great and wonderful and all singing, all dancing you was. And you had me standing outside of Rage for a good half an hour. Yeah.
Right.
And Ron, I don't know if you remember the first time you played
No,
at
I don't
Marshgate
remember.
Lane. Well, I remember.
Yeah, yeah.
You stuffed that place up.
Thank you.
You smashed that place up. I can remember people coming up to me after your set saying, "Who's that guy? Who is that guy? That guy just stuffed up this place, smashed it up
I do not
completely."
remember.
Right? Probably the best thing I ever did.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank
which
you.
is why, if you look at any Telepathy flyer, if I've done 1,000 flyers, you will see DJ Ron on 999, right, of those lineups on my flyers.
Wow,
Yeah?
that's a
You
compliment, man. Thank
smashed
it
it up, bro.
Thank
You
you. Thank you very
smashed it up.
much.
And to be honest with you, I don't think you ever look back. You've just gone on to smash it up constantly and consistently.
Thank you.
Not forgetting SL, because, the two of you together, that was the night, innit? That was like, I based so many of my Telepathy promotions around Ron and SL in the middle of the night.
Thank
Because
you.
I know you're never going to disappoint and you're always going to deliver.
Appreciate that.
You know what I mean?
I do appreciate it.
I understand and I respect your humility, but you know yourself, between you and SL, argument done. You know what I mean?
All right, so moving forward, you're running Telepathy. I'm going to go back to this again. You're running Telepathy. You're a young man making money, more money than you can count. You're used to making money, so the ego part of it isn't such a thing anymore. Because it's something of your past anyway, right? Walk me through the next phase of like your life. Then, even if you say that essentially that nothing was affecting you personally in your personal life, you do speak of the trajectory based on the fact that now you are in that world. Talk me through that, because there's a number of years before we get to Wax Club. There's a number of years before, before the end of Wax Club. There's and Wax Club in itself was an era. There was an era of Wax Club which was, in my opinion, like a breeding ground for new talent. But before we even get there, there's a big gap between Marshgate Lane and Wax Club. So what was happening in your life?
Telepathy Marshgate Lane, it actually, as a venue, it didn't last that long. I can remember it wasn't without its issues. Do you know what I mean? I can remember the first year we was there, the first New Year's Eve, we had an incident and a guy died outside. You know, to this day, I can't remember the guy's name. I never met his family. I've never had a chance to express any sorrow or any regret or anything in relation to that guy. Admittedly, at that time I was young and it was all a, carousel ride. It was spinning and it was spinning really fast. But I would like to say, actually, especially being on camera now, if any of that guy's friends, families, relations are watching this, I'd like to just express my regret and sorrow and apologies for what happened, because at the time I didn't. And as I said, that was probably because my headspace was somewhere completely different.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But the more I think about it, the more I feel obligated to do and say that, because I don't think I gave that enough time or respect that I should have
I'm sure they
at the
appreciate
time.
it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was no confusion with regards to the credibility of the place, the organisation, and what we was doing. But it wasn't without its little isms, its problems, and then ultimately, as I say, I think administratively it didn't meet the criteria. So that's really why it came on top. I left there, and I think immediately after leaving there, I did an event at Michael Sobel.
Do you need that tissue?
No, not
Okay.
really. Sorry.
That's all right.
I did an event at Michael Sobel Sports Centre. And that was really the beginning of telepathy outside of Marshgate Lane, and me now as a promoter out there utilising other people's venues, you know what I mean, and promoting events up and down length and
Were you
breadth of the
still working
country.
with Billy at that time?
Initially, no. That first event at Sobel, which I've got to tell you was a mad, crazy event. Yeah, I think Sobel was licensed for...
I remember it.
Do you remember it?
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was licensed for about 3,000 people. We must have had 10,000 people there. The queue went around the building, right? So that was the start of telepathy kind of promoting at various venues. You're going to have to remind me of the timeline, Ron, because when I say various venues, I'm talking about Roller Express, Tasco Warehouse, Sanctuary, Milton Keynes, Brewery Road, you know, up and
I
down,
mean,
length
there's.
and
I
breadth
mean,
of the
we could,
country.
if we were in, if we continued down this route, we would stop and speak for 20 minutes about each venue and each event that we went through, you know, like, and I think it's while I think it's important to list them and document them, I'm equally interested, I should say, in how you as a individual were going through your life at that time. Were you consumed by this as being your world? And I understand if it's the case that your world therefore was consumed by being a promoter, and therefore it's hard to separate the two, then I get it. But would that be the case?
To a degree, yeah. I mean, all right, let me take you back a little bit,
Okay.
right? So I can't remember at what point, but at some point we ended up at the Wax Club. Yeah. Initially, when I got to the Wax Club, I had just, if I remember correctly, acquired Deja Vu FM and was going to run it as a garage event. Yeah, because I'd just acquired the radio station, or I'd had this radio station, wanted to utilize the radio station to fill the club. But that didn't really work out. And then obviously I had telepathy running, and I thought, you know what? Let me just do a telepathy here. Let me just do a weekly telepathy here. And again, that just caught on fire, bro. It caught on fire. Every Friday night in that place was banged out. Yeah. The sound system in there was next level. As I'm sure you know, you played there plenty of times. But the sound was tremendous. Yeah. And at that point, you had your, you had your Shy Effects, you had your Andy C, you had your MB, you know what I mean? You had all these guys billing these tunes, you know what I mean? Promoting this new thing we call in jungle, yeah? And the whole thing just fit perfectly together. Saying that, Wax Club wasn't easy because you did have your elements in there, you know what I mean? But it was edgy.
I mean, they were fun times for me, and it was infamous. So, quick list of like the events you used to put on, just for the viewers, so that they can get that. Because I'm kind of really quite interested into a book that's just come out, which is Down the Line Down Here. But before that, there's a gap between Telepathy doing any big events, and then before that, there was like a plethora of different sort of like venues that you were synonymous with. The story of those venues, huge assumption here, but the stories of those events may be in many ways very similar. Just list a few of them, just for the benefit of
Roller
viewers.
Express, we used to do regular events there with, was it Finbar? We had some really good events there over the years. Tasco Warehouse, again, that was another brilliant little place, wonderful little place. Club UN, Tottenham, Club UN, Temple, UN, and whatever else it was called over the years. We did some really, really good events there over the years. Sanctuary, Milton Keynes. We did a number of events there. We did events everywhere,
Yeah,
up
that's
and
the
down the
point.
length and breadth
Exactly,
of the
that's what I'm
country.
saying. Yeah,
Half of which I can't remember, to be
yeah,
honest
and
with
that's
you.
why
Yeah?
I kind of like made the statement about, like Telepathy as a brand at that time. They did the groundwork. They're etched into the annals of time. You know.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course they are. It goes without saying.
It was hard to be a promoter. Do you know what I mean? I can remember promoting events, and like the event would be jam, busy from a punter's point of view. Do you know what I mean? But I've spent 20 grand to make 3 grand, 4 grand from that event on that night, as busy as it was. Do you know what I mean? And you do that for a while, you do that for a while, you do that for a while, then you think, hold on a minute, what the fuck am I doing here? There's got to be easier ways to make money. Do you know what I mean? Which is what got me back into venue ownership, as opposed to just promoting, up and down the length and breadth of the country, you know. So I came out of the Wax and I jumped into the Stratford Rex with a couple of partners, Malcolm Campbell, Alan Harris.
In terms of ownership.
Ownership.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't now. This isn't a promotion. Not only is it a promotion, you own the venue.
I own the venue.
Co-own the venue then.
Co-own the venue, but it's not a small proposition, the Stratford Rex.
Of course it's not,
a big place, it's one of them old Astoria type, Victorian type style venues. It's massive, and it's not without its costs and expenses. Do you know what I mean? But that was predominantly what got me back into venue ownership. I just got fed up of promoting these events, speculating ridiculous amounts of money for disproportionate return. Do you know what I mean? All right, you had the other little offshoots of that, i.e. the tape packs. You know, I can remember doing events and making more money off the tape packs than the bloody event. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember. I never got a penny of that tape packs. Never
And
did.
I'm not getting any of it now myself. I was talking to somebody the other day. They told me they bought one for £100. I was like, what? £100?
Not a penny. So
But
much for copyright and performance rights in those days. But carry on.
When I initially got the Rex, it was more a showcase venue, a live concert venue, than it was a rave or a music orientated night out. And I can remember initially when I got the Rex, I could not book a live act. The live act, clicky industry was locked down. You know, the Vince Power, Mean Fiddlers, the Astorias. You couldn't just jump into that arena without being in the boys' club. Yeah. So if you can imagine, I've just spent £1.2 million on this venue and I can't book a live act for love nor money. Yeah. But it's funny, I can remember initially when it started, I was up in, where was I? I think I might have been in Nottingham, one of them places there. Anyway, I was talking to Majika. I don't know if you remember Majika, promoter.
Yeah. Of course I do, yeah.
He used to manage the Prodigy.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, he used to manage the Prodigy. And I remember giving Prodigy their first live booking at Telepathy Marshgate Lane. Wicked night, wicked. They come and they smash the place up pretty much like you did when you played there the first time, yeah? They came down and they did a live performance at Marshgate Lane. Ron, it was something else. But anyway, strangely, they remembered that booking, yeah? So I spoke to their agent and said, I've got this venue. Would you like to come and thing? And Liam and what's his name? What's the other one's name?
Keith Blaine.
Liam and Keith were like, oh, fucking hell, yeah, Sting, Telepathy, Marshgate Lane. La, 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 yeah, we'll do it for you. And Ron, they came down to the Stratford Rex. They fucked it up. Yeah, it was my first live booking at that venue. And it was literally that booking from the Prodigy that then got the Rex.
That's a lovely story, yeah. That's a lovely
running,
story.
do you know what I mean? But it was a lovely story because I honestly didn't think they was gonna like remember.
Yeah, it's a lovely
that
story.
booking.
And big up to them for doing that.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man.
Yeah,
It was like, wow. You know what I mean? You know, somebody does actually not have selective memory and remembers like
That's a
where
lovely
they come
story.
from and you know what I mean?
It's exactly that, yeah.
It was immediately after that I managed to get the Foxy Browns and the Ushers and the Beres Hammonds and you know what I mean? And then the agents and that started opening up to you know, giving us the live acts at the Stratford Rex. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long, but you know, that's another story for another day. But yeah,
I have a question for you. Throughout the early years and the relationship you had with Billy, how did that pan out in the end? And what was the result of the relationship with you and him? Because it sounds like there was like a almost father-son relationship going on there to some degree, albeit, you know, like you know, like not your typical father-son relationship, but I know he was a very special man in your life. So before I dive into another area right in present time, I just wanted to kind of like touch on how did that pan out for you both? And also just to add to it, to be quite specific, obviously God rest his soul, you know, like how did that affect you when he did pass on? So
There are many, many traits of Billy that I feel like, you know, I've inherited through our relationship. It wasn't a father and son relationship, but it was very much uh, a mentoring type of situation, in so much as he taught me a lot about life and how I see life and interact in life. Billy kind of took a back seat, and then unfortunately Billy got ill and was diagnosed with cancer. And if I'm really honest, I should have spent more time with Billy in and around that period. I I went through a very funny phase in life. I've been through several phases in life. Yeah, I've been through the chemically dependent phase of life. You know, I've spent a good 10, 12 years of my life um, doing things I shouldn't do, i.e., playing poker. I spent nearly 12 years of my life playing full-time poker.
right, okay.
Yeah. Um, Trust me, that in itself, that's a book,
Right, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because I've had highs,
Mm,
high highs, um, where I'm playing like 50, 60, 70K
mm,
poker, and I've had low lows
mm,
where I'm doing my absolute bollocks, and I
mm.
don't know if I want a shit shave or have an haircut. Do you know what
And
I
would
mean?
you say that you had a gambling addiction at that time?
Very much so. I've
Right,
had
okay.
many addictions in life.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And I can openly admit that on camera, because
Mm.
that is part of my journey
Of
and
course it
part of
is.
my
Yeah, yeah.
learning experience,
Mm,
which is why I am who I am, what I am today.
mm,
Unfortunately, when Billy got ill, I was going through, uh, you know, my own personal phase in life, and I should have spent more time with Billy. And I think I'm very sure that there was a degree of resentment from Margaret, his wife, Billy, Phil's mum. There may even be a little bit of resentment from Phil himself, yeah, because knowing that me and his dad were so close, and then when he was ill, I was kind of distant. And the thing is, it's only become apparent to me now, more recently, when I reflect back. You know what I mean? Just the same thing as the guy that died at Telepathy. It's only when you really stop and you try and sort of relate back to things that you can be objective about them and go, oh, I should have done this and I should have done that. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, definitely I should have spent more time with Billy. Rest his soul in peace. But Billy, wherever he is, he knows, like in my chest, like, is Billy. Billy, that's my guy. Yeah.
would it be fair to say that there was a bit of a gap or a considerable gap in time from when you were rolling and you were tight to when obviously he got ill,
Mm.
that you guys weren't as close, that
Yeah.
you weren't as in each other's pockets, and as a result of that, that was part of the catalyst as to why you weren't there when he was ill.
Very much so.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Very much so. And
Mm,
then, as I said, we all have our crosses to bear. We all you know what I mean, our things dealing with. Do you know what I mean? But that is, nevertheless, whether we were close at that time or not, we'd been through so much by then
mhm,
that, really, I do regret not spending a little bit more time. I did go to see him a couple of times, but I just feel like I should have been there for him more. Do you understand what I'm saying? Should have been there for him more. But yeah, I mean that's really what happened with Bill.
You know, you spoke about, you might not want to answer this question, you can leave it. And I can jump straight into the book and we can round it up. But you spoke just now about you and your gambling, yeah? And I spoke about earlier about the gap in between this, between that, between this and that. When did that kind of kick in for you, the gambling, and then you found that that became an addiction of sorts?
So let me make a definition, right, for you, because there is a definition to be made. Playing poker, yeah, and gambling are not the same thing.
Okay.
Right? Gambling is when you go to a casino and you have absolutely no idea what the outcome is going to be. It's pure luck as to whether you win or whether you lose. Yeah? Poker is way, way more strategic. I can win a hand of poker with the worst hand, right? Just depending on how I play, how people perceive me at the table, and generally just how good a player I am. So I can determine the outcome of any hand that I'm in. So it's a lot more calculated than gambling.
Okay,
You know
I
what I mean?
understand. Yeah.
I spent probably, as I said, I mean, that was my vocation in life, as well as everything else that I had going on, because I always had, you know what I mean, nightclub running or radio or whatever else I was doing going on. My almost full-time occupation was playing poker for about 12 years.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And if anybody is actually listening to this podcast, right, let me tell you, Ron, it's not the way you want to earn a living. I played poker, but to be honest with you, poker was a distraction for me because I had other demons that I was fighting, and it was almost like an escape for me.
Is that when it started, when you say it was an escape for you, and the demons that were at that time, or has it been progressively those same demons that have kept you there, or has it been that now the poker became the demon?
Oh, poker definitely became the demon.
Right.
Poker definitely became the demon. But the problem is, you can't do one thing and do the other. You know what I mean? If you're sitting at a table for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, sometimes 2 days. I used to run my own game, right? I'd be sitting down. Sometimes my game would run for 3 days. Yeah? 3 days of mental energy being taken up and absorbed at a poker table. When you're done, you've got nothing left. So you've got to spend the next 2 days trying to recuperate. By the time you catch yourself, the week is done. Where's your time to do all the other things that are going on in life?
That's crazy, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You know, so it was a difficult time, but, you know, sometimes you just find yourself in a headspace where you can't be objective about things, you know what I mean? And, you know, you are where you are, doing what you're doing. And before you spin around, like, you realise, oh, shit, 10 years have gone.
You know, it sounds to me like when I was pressing earlier, and I'm saying like, oh, you know, trying to find out what's going on within the gaps in your life. Yeah, it sounds like this took up a big chunk of that time. You know, living that lifestyle would have then had its knock-on effects then in your own personal lives and what have you. But I mean, would I be right in saying that you're away from that now, or is that still something that you are involved in?
Nah, I've been away from that for many, many years now, but I do occasionally dabble, but the difference being now I can be not so absorbed or consumed with it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Because until you actually experience something and go through it and come out the other side of it is when you can be totally objective about it and keep your perception.
And your desires at bay.
Do you understand?
Yeah, yeah.
Because, you know, if you go down that road, it leads.
You've been there before.
to,
Yeah,
you
you've been there a
understand?
number of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, to be honest with you, I can take it or leave it now. I mean, it's taken me many, many years to understand myself and my own personality or character defects.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But fingers crossed, hopefully, I have done that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I mean,
Ken, tell me about the book.
yes.
Not the one you're writing in the future that you didn't want to tell everybody about in this podcast, so you kept some of the stories for the book. I not mean that book. I mean this book here. Thanks, Oz. Cheers.
Yeah.
Tell me about this. Step in Time, Conversations with Kenny Sting King. Tell me about this.
So this book here is, it's not an autobiographical book in so much as a lot of things that we've spoken about. If you chart my journey through the industry, I've been through quite a few genres of music, you know, with the Telepathies, the Life Utopias, the New Jack Cities, in the drum and bass scene, the Obsessions, the various promotions that I've done within the funky house, the garage promotions, the last man stand-ins, the frisky events. You know, I've been through several genres of music. The grime, obviously, was a significant part of my journey because a lot of the all of the grime industry basically came through Deja Vu at some point in time. You had to be on Deja Vu if you were into that genre of music. You know, even Rinse FM, Pay As You Go, were on Deja Vu at one point or another in time. Yeah. Big up G, by the way. I'm my brethren that, you know.
He mentioned you. Yeah, he did mention you.
Yeah, that's my brethren. I got a lot of love for G. Me and G got a lot of history, man.
He did mention you.
Yeah. But the book is the transcribe of an interview that I did with Brav and Rolo.
Okay.
Brav is a guy, he has a show on a station called NTO.
Okay.
Really, really cool guy. Heard my story and was like, what? You did this and that and that and this and no, we gotta get that on paper. Do you know what I mean? We gotta document that.
I love that.
Yeah.
That.
Really cool guy. And the thing is, it's not like we've tried to monetize the book. It literally, from Brav's perspective, is purely for the love of the music in the industry.
Incredible. I love that. I'd like to meet this guy one day.
Yeah.
I love that energy.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Rolo, who co-produced the book as well, same. Do you know what I mean? Rolo is like, you know, these guys, they love the industry.
Well, that's
they love the
incredible.
genre, drum
That is
and bass.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
But they're really capable guys. They're like professional guys within their industry. Brav is a partner in a law firm. Rolo does adverts for all of these big brands. You know what I mean? They're professional guys, and they looked at it and they was like, really? You did
That's
that? You did
incredible.
that?
That's an incredible story.
And I got so much love for these guys. Honestly, they
Mm.
are golden guys. That's what I say. You know, sometimes if something is meant to happen, it will just happen because we found each other and we managed to get a book out of it.
Where can people find the book?
So, another amazing bunch of people. Dave and his lovely wife, Idea Publishing. They've taken on the book and are distributing the book, but Idea Publishing as an organisation, they're very arty. So you'll notice in the book that it's not just loads and loads of text. You know, there are loads of images and stuff in here, which really was a catalyst for, I think, Brav and Rolo putting the book out. They didn't just want to do another book. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I mean the book is kind of unique in so much as it's very there are loads of photos, loads of pictures, loads of stills from videos, as well as some commentary by myself. Do you know what I mean? So it's a coffee table book as opposed to an autobiographical book that tells an in-depth story about me. You can grab a copy from Idea Publishing.
Okay.
But it really is just it's from a promoter's perspective on the industry over quite a long period of time.
Yeah, kind of like a historic look at your legacy as a promoter, and the brand Telepathy.
The brand Telepathy, the various venues that I've owned, the various radio stations. I've had a few radio stations, not just Deja Vu, Chilling. I had one or two other radio stations as well. But yeah, I think it's just a different perspective on the scene, the industry, and myself. It to have something on paper, documented on paper, for me, is mission accomplished.
Oh, that's lovely.
Thankfully, that's been compounded by people actually going out and buying the book, because literally the day the book came out, 2 days later it was sold out.
Oh, well done.
Yeah. So this is the reprint now. That has gone out, and I believe that this one is well on its way to selling out as well.
Congratulations.
I haven't done a massive number of copies, but that's just testament to Brav, to Rolo, and to Idea Publishing.
Well done to those guys, man. Really well done to all of those people who put themselves out to make this happen.
I'm telling you, my brother, I know it's a book, and there are millions out there, but for me,
it's your book,
mate. I'm telling you, man.
It's made you chuffed.
I'm so chuffed, you wouldn't believe. We did. They did a launch night at Aries, which is a clothes shop in central London, on the first print. And they said to me, yeah, Sting, we're going to do a launch night. I didn't even want to do a launch night. You know what I mean? They said to me, we're going to do a launch night. Come down and sign a few copies of the book. I was like, no, man, I'm definitely not signing nothing. You know what I mean?
Why not?
No, I in my head, because I like to just keep low profile, low key. You understand what I'm saying? Which is fundamentally why the book was done, because I've been so low key that actually nobody knows my story and nobody knows what I've been involved in. And when I told these guys, and it was like, what? No, you got to get that out of there. But they said to me, we're going to have this launch night at Aries. And I was like a little bit skeptical. And yeah, it was almost like a reluctance on my part to go. And I went to the launch night. Mate, there was so many people there. And I got so much love on the day. You know, when it's totally unexpected. I didn't know what to expect. Do you know what I mean?
Didn't realise the impact that you'd had on people, potentially.
Mate, I'm telling you, man. You know, over the years, you do all of this stuff, all of these raves up and down length and breadth of the country, and you don't really realise, like, the impact that you've had.
The legacy you've left.
And I've got to thank everybody that has supported, everybody that came to that launch, everybody that's bought the book thus far. You know, Listen, I'm overwhelmed. Honestly, I am overwhelmed. Don't get me wrong. I've done events. I've had thousands of people at events, but for people to actually come out and show you love,
Yeah, it's really
like,
nice, really
man,
nice. I'm happy
I'm
for you.
telling you, man.
I'm happy for you, man.
You know, I said to Roll, if I don't do another thing,
Mm.
like,
You'd be content with
I'd
that.
be
That's
content
lovely.
with that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Ken, thanks for joining us today, man. You know, I
Pleasure.
look forward to the actual biography, considering that you edited the podcast, right? But nevertheless, I appreciate your time because it has been a considerable amount of time, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
Me too, my brother.
Thank you very much.
Much
indeed.
appreciated. Thank you.
Big up.
Thank
big
you.
up.
Thank you, Oz. Cheers, mate. Grab yourself a copy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Respect.
That's a wrap.